What is going on, Secondhand Talent family? It is Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent. Thanks as always to Mark Spusta for the attire, to Tenacious Toys and Luke Chu for the desk candy, as well as this custom painted Crush the Can by Steiner, available on secondhandtalent.com. Maybe there's one. And thank you so much to all of you, our listeners, readers, and viewers who make this show possible. And most importantly, thank you to this week's guest, folks. We are going back to a season 4 tradition of notes. Our guest this week, ladies and gentlemen, is a Grammy-winning music producer, mixer, writer, and a YouTuber known for his wonderful channel, Freaking Out with Billy Hume. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Billy Hume. Welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
It's really, really, really a pleasure to have you on, and I'm pretty sure everyone will find out in a real short while why. But before we get into it, this is a unique connection for guests. We were connected through a mutual friend of ours, and I'm so curious. I ask this question at the top of every show. But these ones are always kind of special ones. When our friend approached you and said there's a podcast that you should consider being on called Secondhand Talent, what's the first thing you thought it might be about?
I mean, I don't know. My channel's called Freaking Out with Billy Hume. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't really think about it, to be honest with you. I don't know. You know, people have weird names for things, and you never really know what they mean. I mean, think about the Beatles. I mean, or the Eagles. Like, who would name their band the Eagles? But we just accept it. I mean, isn't that a goofy name, the Eagles? Hey, let's have our name. How about the Bears?
I mean, way to pick a band that I like abhor, but like.
Oh, I actually love the Eagles, but it is a goofy name.
But it is. It's like, and I'm not saying there aren't a lot, but it's a lot less creative than like Dinosaur Jr. You know, like that's like way more in the you're thinking wheelhouse.
Yeah,
well, that's like a Triceratops as a junior dinosaur, but That's actually a unique answer for that question. Still, we're keeping that tradition alive. Just that people have interesting names for things, and that's the way it is. I think that's a great way to set the stage for this interview.
You know, strangely enough, as I've had my channel for 5 years, and and lately I get a lot of comments, not one single person has ever asked, why do you call it Freaking Out with Billy Hume? And maybe it's apparent from watching my videos, because I'm out, or especially my live streams, because I'm usually freaking out. But nobody's actually ever asked why, ever, in the thousands of comments I've gotten.
I actually have a few guesses, and we might as well start there at the end. Why not? Fuck the notes. So I started checking out your show after our friend recommended it to me, and what it reminded me of is the energy that I had in creating this podcast, in the sense that, you know, you started your channel right around the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So what happened? There's just a ton of pent up creative energy. And even for people who are capable of working remotely in the music space, like there was a period of time where there was just nothing going on and we were all fucking freaking out. And all we wanted were people to freak out with. And that's kind of where I think the name comes from, and it's cool to be a freak about your own stuff. Like, you know, we all have to be our own best advocate. If I'm not freaking out about my podcast and the first one to talk about it, nobody will be. If you're not freaking out about yourself and your channel and your production and, you know, your music accomplishments, nobody will be. Like, I mean, well, you may be a little different than me, but it was a time when we were literally freaking out, and it was an opportunity to kind of, as I saw it, share that with, you know, people who were really kind of going through the same thing, especially artists who were going through the same thing.
That's a good theory. Unfortunately, you're completely wrong.
I figured as much.
Yeah,
my other guess, real quick.
It's funny because, well, first off, the pandemic, I wasn't freaking out. And a lot of it has to do with where I live. I live out in the country, and I live on several acres of land, and I don't really go out much anyway. I mean, last several years. I mean, if I have a band in to produce, yeah, they're here, but I get a lot of mix work. I've always spent a lot of time alone. And during the pandemic, I understand some people are living in towns and they're in apartment buildings and they can't go out and all that, but I live basically at a park. Like there's a lake back here. There's a lot of space. I'm out in the country. And it was actually, for me, I kind of felt like, oh man, I get time. I can like redo the studio. And my wife started beekeeping, so I built her a bunch of beehives. I'd been talking about doing a YouTube channel for a while. Actually, I was going to do a podcast originally. And then my kids have been bugging me about doing, basically they feel like I should do a movie about my life because I've got all these crazy stories, but it's like, yeah. So then they were like, well, maybe you should do a YouTube channel. And a buddy of mine was over here, this guy named George. He's a musician. I was recording him like 30 years ago when he was in high school. And he would often just stay with us because he's got kids about the same age as my kids. So they'd come over and they'd all spend the night and they'd play and he would cook us breakfast. He's a great cook. And in the mornings, I tend to go on these rants about things where I'm talking about music or life or why Muskrat Love by Captain and Tennille actually is a great tune. But that was one of my rants one morning.
Won't get any argument for me on that one.
Yeah, it was like I'll come up with some stuff. And I was thinking, like, what should I call the channel? And he said, well, I don't know. You're just always freaking out. You should call it Freaking Out with Billy Hume because I am kind of always freaking out. I've got a lot of energy. So he was actually one that came up with it. I was like, oh, okay, I like that, you know? And that's actually where it came from. But it was just, I guess it's just kind of how people know me, you know? Like, once you work with me and, yeah, I'm freaking out, but there's some reason behind it, and usually it has a lot to do with it. I just really care about the work that I'm doing. So if it's not exactly right, I'm going to freak out.
Fair enough. I mean, my number 2 guess was way off. Then I figured you might be a big. I figured you might be a big Zappa fan. And then, but you know, as you were saying that, I had this thought where I was like, oh no. I think he's describing exactly what I tried to do, but called it a podcast. Because to me, all I wanted to do is have a place where we can share these stories before they get lost. Because, you know, I've got this big Fare Thee Well tapestry behind me. Grew up listening to the Grateful Dead, and I was always just awestruck by the Wall of Sound tour. And not a handful of people that I know can name more than, you know, a few of the people who were on the road with the Grateful Dead setting up this massive experiment in sound 100 days out of the year for 3 years. Think of all those stories that are just lost, you know? And that was a big motivator in getting this project started. Was, you know, I have so many friends who work in this space and who have made a career out of making sure that when you show up for Doors at 7:30, you have a phenomenal fucking time every time. And we just want to have them on, give them the spotlight they deserve, give them the promotion they deserve and the boost and the credit they deserve, and encourage folks to say thank you to them at the show, you know, because it could really go a long way.
Yeah.
We could really, I mean, we could begin anywhere, but what I'm genuinely curious, you know, about is where did you start out musically? What were your first, you know, things that you like? What was on your like earlier playlist of music that really influenced you?
Well, the reason I actually started taking music lessons was actually to avoid piano lessons. My mom wanted me to take piano lessons, and I thought, this is like in the 70s, so I thought like piano lessons, you know, like I was into rock and roll. I was listening to Uriah Heep and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and rock and roll. And I was out with my mom somewhere. We lived in Berlin, Germany, and a military base. And we're in a building for some sort of appointment. Can't remember what. And she's saying that she wants me to take piano lessons. And as we're walking down this hallway, as she's saying that, I happen to look over to my left, and we're walking by this door, and I see a drum set inside because it was some sort of, you know, it wasn't an officers club. It was like a NCO club or something like that for like, non-commissioned officers and stuff like that. So, and somebody was in there cleaning, but there's these drums up on a stage with these red lights on them. And there's nobody in there. It was just like a cleaning person and drums with lights on them. And I thought, that looks cool. And it just blurted out of my mouth. I said, Mama, can I take drum lessons instead? And she's like, sure. It's like, got out of that one. Jesus. And I got referred to this guy at the high school. And it's funny. I've got a picture of him somewhere. He's like this freaky, weird dude that my sister knew, long hair. And he looked like he would have been in Uriah Heep or something like that. And I went over to his house and started taking drum lessons, and I kind of really got into it. And then we moved back to the States, moved to Virginia, and I just started playing in bands. And mostly we would jam on like Black Sabbath songs. I joined a band that apparently for some reason, I didn't think it was weird at the time, but we only played Black Sabbath songs. Now I think about it, it's like, oh, sure, And I did that for a while, but I soon moved to guitar because I had a lot of song ideas and nobody would listen to the drummer. So I thought, well, I'll learn how to play guitar. But the earliest stuff was pretty heavy rock, like Black Sabbath, Uriah Heep, some progressive stuff. Although I was really into Harry Chapin Carpenter. No, Harry Chapin, his daughter's, her last name's Carpenter, but Harry Chapin, who wrote Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, which he's known for that, but his other songs are just, oh my God, amazing.
He's an incredible songwriter.
So it was like a combination between heavy rock bands and really good songwriters. Because I was also into John Denver, who, no matter what anybody thinks, that dude wrote some great songs.
That's kind of the duality that I grew up with, actually. I had my dad taking me to go see, like Three Dog Night and Rare Earth. And oh, man. Rare Earth was really, really, really amazing. Three Dog Night was great too, but Rare Earth was really cool. He took me to see like Blue Oyster Cult, Bad Company, like all these like 70s and 80s bands. And then from my mom, I got Zappa and The Dead. And then my dad also loved, and both of them really loved that column, kind of like my mom listened to like James Taylor and Carole King, and my dad listened to Neil Diamond, and so there was a lot of that Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So there was a lot of like both sides of the spectrum in the house. I feel like it's a good way to be, to have. Yeah,
my dad was listening to Perry Como and some really lame crap. My mom liked Engelbert Humperdinck, but they had some Burt Bacharach albums, which actually I didn't have any albums. My brother had some albums. I couldn't afford to buy any, so I'd go and raid my parents' thing, and I hated everything except the Burt Bacharach stuff is actually pretty damn good. Always been a Burt Bacharach fan.
One of my wilder music stories is that when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I found my mom's copy, her CD copy of God Street Wine's Red. And I just fell in love with that album. And 20 years later, had the opportunity to see them in 2018, and then didn't have another chance till just recently in September of 2025. And I got to just thank them profusely. It was one of the first bands that I ever really latched onto that taught me that the same band can do many different things, even in the same song, with instruments. And, from hip hop, I learned hip hop. Honestly, I don't know where it came into my life, but like that's what I listened to at home. And then on my own, I listened to Weird Al and hip hop. That was like we were saying a little bit earlier. And like I said, like I felt like I had a substantial floor at home. And then like on the school bus every day, it was like a Weird Al album or Marshall Mathers LP, 2001, The Chronic, I mean, pick, there was one of the, in my opinion, great eras of music, but you had a bit of a hand in it, in a little bit. And I kind of want to understand how you moved from that kind of rock base. Like, what were those song ideas, and how did that, or if that did, help you gravitate towards like the more hip hop layer of things?
Well, it had nothing to do with music, actually. I had a home studio, not this one. It was one closer to Atlanta. And this is way back before the internet. So I would put advertisements in this paper called The Creative Loafing, which was like the Atlanta arts newspaper, right? So they'd have articles with talk about bands and stuff like that. And I would put an ad in the classified section, like recording studio, $10 an hour. I had a little home studio. And this guy called me up. His name's Chris Vermillion. And he starts asking me questions. I'm thinking maybe he's wanting to book studio time. And he's like asking about a microphone. Like, is this microphone, do you think, good for recording at home? And because he had like a MPC and some sort of a little multi-track something. I said, I guess, and he just wanted to know about it. I don't know. He just randomly called me up. And then he called again, asked me more questions. I'm like, oh, fuck, is that guy again, And if this was before caller ID, I probably would have blocked him. But he kept calling and calling. And then he invited himself over. Can I come over? I was like, and the funny thing is I actually am more likely to say yes to somebody like that than a normal person. I'm kind of into weirdos. So I was like, all right, sure, come on over. And he came over. He's a weird dude. We're actually still friends. He actually lives really close to here. And so this is like in 95, 96, something like that. And he walks in the studio. And at this time, I had a home studio, but I was still painting houses. So I had my studio, but I also had my motorcycle parked in the studio, and then paint buckets over here and ladders and shit.
What prompted creating the studio space? Just
to have a studio, because I was, I got into music to be a rock star. And I thought I wanted to record myself, and I only started recording other people to make money to pay for the damn gear. So it's kind of it was my studio because I had bands. I had my own bands for years. I was a lead singer in my own groups for years, and then I had other bands, and then my wife at the time had a band, and I'd record my friends' bands. So this guy comes walking in, Chris comes walking in, the first thing he looks around and he goes, I swear, first thing he said, and I don't know why he says this because it's like paint buckets in there. He looks around and goes you could make $1 million in here. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, man, you clean up these paint buckets, paint these walls purple, put a Chinese lamp over here. And he had all these weird ideas like, who is this guy? But then I thought about it. I thought, actually, purple's a great idea. So I painted the walls purple, got the Chinese lamp, and he would come by, and he'd have, most of what he said I didn't understand, but every once in a while he'd say something. I was like, that's actually a really good idea. And then he started asking me, do you know you thought about working on rap records? I'm like, no. What? You mean the boom? The guys talk over the boom, boom, and they go, blah, blah, blah. That? Yeah, man, it's really cool. So, but I'm willing to try anything. So he brought over some friends, and I think he got me some sessions, and I didn't understand the music, but I liked the people, and I thought, hey, this is cool. Plus, they let me make the drums really big, and they're very open people that he was bringing over. And this was way more hip-hop, way more artsy. The guys he was bringing over, guys he had known up in Chicago and had moved to Atlanta. So it was that kind of thing, more underground hip-hop. And I kind of got into it, and then he started talking about this idea of doing a compilation record that we would fund. And he'd bring in all these rappers from out Atlanta because this is going to be huge. Rap's going to be huge. I'm like, whatever, man. I said, I know this guy named Bone Crusher and this other guy. And he knew all these guys, but nobody was famous. They were just friends of his. And now Bone was working on records. They were working on stuff. Little John had a regional hit called Who You Wit. Wasn't massive, but it was big. He was working at a radio station and a record label, but I didn't know any of that. So he brings over all these guys. And we do this project called Full Contact Sports. We ended up actually finishing the album, but it was a lot of fun. I really liked all these people, and I was really bored with rock and roll at the time because in the 90s, I thought rock and roll just sucked ass. Every time I tried to turn up the drums or, hey, let's do a guitar solo, or let's just bring up the bass, they'd be like, everybody was so careful. We can't actually make it sound cool. We're too cool to sound cool. I'm like, man. Whereas they're working on rap and hip hop records, it's like, hey, can I, crank up the bass? Or do whatever. There was never any conversations because in rock and roll, and I still get this to this day, if you come up with an idea during a rock session, everybody has to have a fucking conversation about it, right? in hip hop and rap, it's not like that at all. If you have an idea, they're like, try it. Try it. Proof is in the pudding. And so I was really into that. And then the other thing that was kind of cool is that I'd never really felt accepted or part of any group ever in my life. And there were multiple times on these sessions where, like, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, would be hanging out at the studio and she'd be like beating or making a fucking dream catcher, some shit like that, right? And this like hood dude would look over like, hey, what you doing? She'd be like, I'm making a dream catcher. What is that? So he said, oh, she'd explain it to him. He'd be sitting there looking and he'd go, can you make me one? I was like, hell fucking yeah, sure. Like everybody was very open, very accepting. There wasn't any kind of like, I don't know. It's just like in other genres, and I hate to be generalistic about it, but I've just found like in certain genres and all that, there is definitely a way everybody's supposed to act. And there's like all these rules about how you're supposed to do things, and everybody's really careful. But in the rap stuff I was doing, it was like very open. Like the idea that you could have 3 guys sitting in the control room writing a hook. And one of them is a guy who's nobody's ever met before. He just happens to be hanging out. And they're going to listen to the hooks, and they're just going to pick the best hook. At first, I was offended by this. I was like, oh, how dare you? But then I was like, wow, everybody's opened everything. So I did this album. It never made any money.
Now, when you say, just real quick, when you say crowds of people, how many people would be in the studio at any given, like max capacity at any given point in time? Like that you're bouncing ideas off
max
of and
capacity.
getting feedback from.
But, I don't know, 20 people in there. So, I don't know, it's like,
oh, yeah.
And they'd be like, I'd be in the control room, and then they'd all cram into this little lounge, and they'd be freestyling in there, which I'd never heard before. I'd heard it when I had heard it in middle school and not realized I was hearing it on the playground, but not realizing that's what I was hearing. The guys would be battling, but they'd be insulting. It's like, oh, it's interesting how their insults rhyme. I didn't realize that they were actually battling. So that was like amazing. Like, wow, like this is really, really cool. And it was like, I don't know, it was just a lot of fun. And, and so we did the album, and we didn't make any money off of it, but everybody in town heard it. So I started getting booked a lot by people. And I just really remember liking Bone Crusher because he was just fun. And I think he liked me because I stood up to him. He tried to like finish a part and walk out of the control room, and I thought he could do better. And he's like, nah, that's good enough. And I went and stood in front of the doorway and told him, you can't fucking leave till you do another fucking day. And he's like looking at me. He's like twice my height. And he thought, shit, I'll go do it again. We just always had a really cool relationship. And so after the album was done, I was getting booked. And I just hit up Bone Crusher and I said, hey, you want to work on some songs? I took him out to a Taco Bell and bought him a burrito, and we sat around and talked. And it's like, sure. So we just started working on songs and just for the fun of it. That turned into something like, I don't know, 50 or 60 or 70 freaking songs. Just, I almost regret it. Is like, he took advantage of that. It's like, you want to work on some songs? He'd call up. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh my God. And he'd show up. But I had so much fun. And then of course, Lil Jon had come in on that album, but the Full Contact Sports album, he liked what I did. He started booking me. Other people started booking me. I was working on Little Jon's album. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. We were just recording. I didn't know who Little Jon was. I just knew he must be popular around town or something like that. And I had recorded on a song. It was actually a Bone Crusher song for his group Lyrical Giants, and I played mandolin on it, right? And I was like, cool. And I thought maybe they'd give it to their friends or something like that. And I remember driving around and I heard it go by in a car. And I was like, oh shit, he must know them. He must have given them a cassette. He's got friends everywhere. And then that same day, I go to a grocery store with my wife, and I'm standing in line, and Chris was like, what are you working on then? I said, oh, I got Little Jon coming into the studio. And the cashier looks at me and says, you know Little Jon? I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, son of a gun, he's got friends in the grocery store. He's just got friends everywhere. Didn't occur to me that they were known in Atlanta. They were like not famous nationally, but in Atlanta. So Lil Jon came in that night, and I'm like, hey, are you famous or something? And he just laughed. He's like, I mean, kind of, And then I started to get a clue. I was like, oh shit, like this shit's getting played on the radio. And that was the other thing with Bone Crusher. We would like just work on a song, right? He'd come up and we'd just work on something. It wouldn't even be that great of a song, But he believed in everything he did. So he would like leave that night and somehow talk his way into the radio station and get him to play at like 1 a.m, right? That's when I was like, okay, I can't give out rough mixes unless I really work on them, you know? And it just blew up from there. And I didn't really get into hip hop because I started listening to music and liking it. I'd never listened to it before. I didn't hardly know anything about it. Like when Yin Yang Twins came in the studio, I had no idea what they were fucking saying because they'd be like talking that god dang, you know, Swats Atlanta shit. You know, I was like, what the fuck? And then they'd say shit and laugh at me. And I'd ask Collie Park, their producer, knew him as DJ Smurf. Yeah, I'd look at him and say, well, of course we all call him Smurf. I'd be like, Smurf, what are they talking about? He's like, they're just making fun of you. Don't worry about it. And then years later, I realized these guys can speak better English than me. They were just fucking with me, man. They would do that shit all the time, like with the white boy. But that shit was a blast. But the thing was, I really liked everybody involved personally. It was a chance for me to like light the afterburners on my jet and just go with it. Like nobody was holding me back or putting restrictions on me. And I knew that and I also knew that the records were going to be huge. I was actually doing a lot of sessions with Rick Beato at the time, and who's a big YouTuber. But he was producing at the time, and I was kind of his engineer, like for him. And I kind of didn't really enjoy doing it because he's hard to work with sometimes. But also, I was sick of rock and roll, and I knew if I stuck with hip hop, it's like I could just tell where it's going. It's like I'm going to have a hit record, and I want to try that. So I quit working with him. I said I'm going to focus on rap music for a while, and it was just like I just want to see how far I can take it, you know. And it was a great. I thought I'd just do it for a couple of years. I think I did it almost exclusively for about 10 years, you know. And it was just crazy, dude. It's like, I play mandolin. I don't know why the fuck, you know, I don't know how the hell I got involved in this shit.
Just being open, you know, just being willing and open to new experiences happening and to trying something out. And, you know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like, you know, one of my mottos is the key to happiness is low expectations. And, you know, when you're at that level, anytime something happens, it's great.
Well,
and
sorry to interrupt you, but I have incredibly high expectations, which is part of the problem. Well, I'm only learning at this point in my life to have low expectations. But the thing was, I'd spent, at the point this was happening, I was in my 30s. And I'd spent years with bands with these expectations, and everybody would like wuss out. They wouldn't push the record. They wouldn't really go and gig. They wouldn't really push their careers. But these guys, they exceeded my expectations. They're like, I'm going to get a record deal. And I'm like, sure. And then like 6 months later, they got a record deal, and they're walking in the studio with the president of a record label. I'm like, oh, yeah, they did. Yeah, that's, you know.
But yeah, it's really wild. And I got to ask, because, you know, you mentioned Lil Jon. And, you know, that is absolutely smack dab in the middle when he hit the national scene was when I was in early high school. And, yep. Like, also, like, if you're a comedian, your jokes do not get played on the radio, and they definitely don't get played at a volume at which other people could possibly hear it. That has never happened in the history of ever, except maybe with Sam Kinison. But, I mean, what a feeling. Is there a particular song that really, like, hit the spot when you first started hearing it out and about?
Oh, I mean, I never really heard anything out and about. I was always working. I always work. I think I'd been doing it for years, and I thought, oh, I guess I should listen to the radio and hear something I worked on. It didn't really occur to me. Now, I will say this. When I think it was Never Scared, I don't know, it was something with Bone Crusher, because everybody's always trying to get me to go to the strip club or the big clubs in Atlanta, and I'm like, I just want to work, you know. It's like I finally went somewhere. Bone said, you got to come out for this thing. And we all met somewhere, and then he was like, we're going to take the limo over. And I just bought a new motorcycle. It's like, I'll ride my motorcycle. So I ride my motorcycle, and of course the valet guy was like, no, you can park it yourself. But I go in this club, and I can't remember what club it is. It's a big club, like one of the big clubs in Atlanta. And I go and I sit in the VIP section, and they're playing something that I mixed. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. You know, that's something I mixed. And then they played another song that I mixed. I think the first 7 songs I heard when I went in there were things that I'd mixed. I'm like, oh my God, we must be doing something big. And then something else came on that somebody, I think Ray C mixed or something like that. And I was like, oh shit. Because I guess I should have gone in the club earlier. It didn't occur to me that where these songs are getting played, like the real action is in the clubs, and clubs don't use stereo speakers. They're using PA systems, which have horns instead of tweeters. That kind of makes you think different about how you mix a record. I was like, oh, no wonder. And also the stereo field. I pan things pretty far, and then I realized, like, oh, wait, you know, it's good. That's why their mixes sound more in mono, because they realize it's going to be in the club. That was kind of funny, though, but it actually kind of affected my mixing. Plus, those guys had been mixing that shit for years before me, so I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, but the funny thing is, to this day, I think the first time I heard anything of rap music that I had mixed on the radio, it was probably 10 years after it happened. My wife and I went to a bar somewhere. You know, we were waiting for somebody to show up, and I think a Yin Yang Twins song came on. I was like, that sounds familiar. She's like, yeah, you worked on that. I'm like, oh shit. But I'm serious. I don't really listen to the radio. I mean, it's just kind of crazy, man. I'm just so out of society.
Being perched where you are in your little motorcycle nest over there, were you surprised by the critical acclaim that your record started to get?
I mean, what do you mean?
I mean, when you say you knew they were going to be big records and when you heard them playing around, but when we start talking about like higher quote unquote critical reception, like Grammy level and whatnot, is there a certain thing that happened? I've never been there. I don't know. Like, is there like a pat on the back moment, or is it kind of just like another step in the journey?
I mean, from my clients, yes. And from the industry, like, you know, like, actually, I just got a call from Bone literally right before this came on, because Bone Crusher, because of a YouTube video I just put out, and he was calling me up about that and how much he liked it, and then how some people are mad about something he said in the video and whatever. So yeah, my clients will call me up. The weird thing is I've had a lot of hit records. I've got plaques. There's plaques I should have that I don't have because I just didn't bother calling up to have them send it to me. I just would forget. I don't really give a shit. But what's funny is that I won a Grammy. That, I guess, I mean, as far as awards, that would be the biggest one. And that was several years ago for a bluegrass record I did with a band called Infamous String Dusters.
One of my favorite bands of all time.
Amazing.
Oh, God, they are phenomenal. Group. Shout out to the Infamous String Dusters.
And so I did this album called Laws of Gravity, got a Grammy. I used to be part of the Recording Academy. So I was actually the head of the producers and engineer wing for the Southeast, and I was really involved, and they'd send me around the country to do speaking stuff, public speaking, which I'm really good at. But as far as the political stuff involved, I hated it, and I hated the monthly meetings. And I didn't even understand why certain people were involved. So I quit, actually. And I let my voting membership expire because I just could give a damn. So I win this Grammy, and we were nominated, and the weird thing is they didn't even send me an invitation. Like, the band's like, are you coming to New York, you know? And I'm like, oh, wait, when is it? They're like, you coming to New York? It's like, well, nobody sent me an invitation. And so I hit up, I don't want to say any names, but the woman who heads it here in Atlanta, these people drive me nuts. And I asked her, like, well, do I get an invitation or anything? Well, you know, bluegrass isn't those categories. You have to buy your own ticket. And blah, 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 blah. I was like, whatever.
For bluegrass, you have to buy your own ticket.
Yeah, fuck
Excuse me.
So I was really busy at the time. And the other thing was like, I was thinking, like, my wife was like, should we go? Should we go? I was like, I don't know, man, because I'm going to have to dress up. And then I got to walk around for 2 days like, how you doing? And my mouth's going to be like this. I'm like, oh, fuck. I hate that shit. So I kind of forgot about it. And then I knew the band was going, and I knew it was like, I guess it's around this week. I didn't even know what day it was. So I was actually in a session at my studio. I was recording this guy. We had just, it was like a country type thing. And we'd gotten the drums done. A drummer was leaving, and we needed to move on other parts. So I needed to move the drums out of the way. So I'm getting mic stands out of the way. And my phone, my text messages are going bing, 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 bing. I'm like, finally I go check it. And it's like, you won a Grammy. And I'm like, what? That's fuck, man. And this buddy finally calls me. It's like, dude, you won a Grammy. It's like, fuck, man. I got microphones to clean. I got microphone cables to wrap. And I hung up.
I'm busy.
I'm like, busy. Like, what am I going to do now anyway? I want a Grammy, you know? And they sent a statue. It's back here. And a watch, which is actually, the watch is really cool because it was like
awesome.
the 50th year anniversary. Where's the fucking watch at?
See, that's useful, at least beyond a paperweight.
Look at this.
I'll fill dead air while you find something. I'm good at that. In high school, I was voted most likely to fill dead air.
The Grammy's cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's cool, but the watch, that is really cool. So, and it's actually got my name on the back. And if you look at you can't really see it that well. It looks like it's waveforms, but it's actually New York skyline. This was cool. The other thing that was really, really cool is the box they sent it in. The foam is perfectly, like you can look at the foam and know it was in the box. I still have the box with that foam space. I know that seems really nerdy to me, but it's like, man, look at this box. Look at this foam.
As a nerd, I resemble that remark. That's awesome.
They're like, oh, yeah, you got a statue. He's like, yeah, but look at the foam that it came in.
Yeah, the foam and the watch. You had me sold there. Fuck the statue. The statue's like...
So it's cool, you know.
Fair enough.
But it's kind of like, to me, I don't know. What do you do? But the point. So here's the point I was going to make. Yeah, but yeah, I got a lot of text messages, but I actually get 10 times, 20 times, 100 times more gratitude and thanks and appreciation and attention from my YouTube channel than I ever got from having a hit fucking record. By far. Like, in the industry, back when I was doing a lot of rap records, there was still like a real recording industry. So, yeah, A&R guys would hear about it. Oh, he makes that record. So you'd get these phone calls from these guys, but it's not like out in public, and record people are just fucking weird anyway. I mean, a couple of them were cool. And that's cool, but then they just try to talk you down on the rates and whatever, man. But with my YouTube channel, I'll make a video and the comments are mostly just amazing. And some people send me these stories about their lives. And it's just like, man, this is like incredible. Like the stuff that people talk about are like, a lot of people say things like how much I inspired them to get back into music or like work on their home studio or something like that. And it's like, wow. Now that to me means way more than a plaque. Some of those plaques, they actually made me pay for. It's like, some of them they would send, but some of them, no, you got to buy the plaques. And my wife would be like, well, go ahead and buy the plaque so we can put it up. I'm like, whatever, I'll pay for the plaque. But man, it's like the YouTube channel for me has been life-changing in so many ways. Like the response I get from people and the relationships that have developed from it, but the impact it has. And to know that people appreciate my work, because working on hit records, you have your name. Well, you used to have your name on the credits, which would, so everybody'd know about it, but you can get known from it, but it's still kind of like you're over here and you don't really get to know people. And then a lot of times the artists you would work with, they kind of would keep you hidden. Like Bone Crusher would go into XXL and whatever, all these big magazines and mention me by name. He would mention me on TV, and Bone has always been great about Billy Hume, you got to bring this guy. But other people would go out of their way not to mention me. And this has happened across multiple genres because I'm their secret weapon. The key part of that is secret.
Interesting. That's always been, I think kind of like an open secret of the industry is that some people just have their sauce as producers, And it didn't occur to me though that next step of it though, where you're just not telling people who your producer is, point blank, period. And I can understand how there would be some level of frustration in that. We talked about the name of the YouTube channel, but and I was looking at it the other day, and it's incredible to see a channel with videos with as many views as subscribers. Like the people who are there to watch stay to watch. It's really, really like consistent and fun.
Thanks.
And it's been, well, I mean, it's something that motivates me, that's for sure. And I gotta ask, like I was saying before, we talked about how the name came to be, but why I think you were talking about it a little bit. Your kids were telling you to start a YouTube channel because of your stories, but what was the actual impetus of getting it out there? And when was like the first, you know, big
This,
big moment where you
there's a
realized it was
lot of
going
things
place?
I think people don't talk about. And one of them, and I did make a video about it, and I swing around to it once in a while because I think it's important, and that's about failure. And that is, most people, they want to talk about the big victories and the things like that, but the reality of it is there are more failures than there are successes, even for the big stars. Like if you actually knew how many other songs they'd worked on, how many other things they'd tried. So a lot of guys, I think a lot of people thought I was going to go on and make videos about how to mix. And I do have some stuff like that, how to record a acoustic guitar and all that. But I'm just more interested in talking about the things that are not music. I was actually thinking about calling the channel Besides the Music, which is like a really boring name. Because I think that there's things about creating music and being a creative person that need to be talked about that have nothing to do with like how to write a song or how to play your guitar better. A lot of it's very psychological. The thing that's fascinated me are the people who succeed and the people who don't. And you can be around people that are really, really, really talented and they never get anywhere. And then some people that are like pretty talented artistically, but they're talented in other ways. And those are the things that actually really interested me. And all the things that have to happen for you to have any success. It's actually almost impossible to have success in the music business. It blows my mind that anybody ever makes any money and that some people get to do it multiple times because it's actually really, really hard. And so people come and they ask me advice and it's usually the wrong questions. It really kind of comes down to your determination and all that typical stuff. But the thing most people don't talk about is perspective. Your perspective. Can you understand where you are in the larger scheme of things? And that what's very important about perspective on the beginning side of it is to understand that it's not as bad as you think and that the struggles you're going through, everybody else has gone through, and that you actually are probably doing better than you realize if you're trying at all. And also that there are more people paying attention to what you're doing than you could possibly realize. They just don't let you know. Then perspective becomes very important as you start to have success, because as you start to have success, your perspective gets really warped. You start to think you're a god and a king or whatever and infallible, and then your ego takes over. And the whole perspective thing at different stages of the career is more important in many ways than networking and all this other kind of stuff. I had a friend that knew everybody in Atlanta. He'd call me, I'm at Usher's house. I'm at so-and-so's house. I never even met Usher. He knew everybody and never could get any, like, as far as a networking guy, he was the best networker I ever knew, and he could never get anything going on, So it's just like, I feel like, so that's what the channel originally was going to be about, was kind of be about those things. And I just, in the early videos, I just don't think I talked about them the right way. And then I realized, like, it's better if I put them into a story, because I'd sit there and lecture at the camera, like, blah, 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 whatever. I look at some of my earlier videos. They're still online. They're terrible. But I figured out, like, it's better to tell these things that I've learned and give the examples as part of a story, like how I figured that out. And you don't always need to be so clear, because sometimes if you're trying to be really clear with a point, people just get that one point. Whereas if you kind of paint it with a broader stroke, then people can get a lot of things from that message. And the other thing was, I kind of, besides wanting to teach people these things, I like performing. I got into music to have my own bands. I love being on stage. I absolutely love performing. And I think people have been telling me for a while, like, oh, you should start a YouTube channel, or you should do a podcast or something. And I thought about it. But one of the things, besides people prompting me, and this is kind of getting back to what you're saying, I was always telling the artists that I work with, because it's not just people hiring me to mix. I mean, I'm developing artists, or people are paying me to develop their music and all that. And I would say, oh, you should like do this, you should do that, or you get on Instagram, or like I'd have all these strategies based on what I'd been researching and studying. And some of them would kind of do it, but then some wouldn't. And I kind of got frustrated with it. I feel like I was just like shouting down a damn bottomless well. Like I'm just wasting my time with some of these people. Like, yeah, you get paid, but if they don't go out and have success, it's just whatever. It's just money you got and it's gone. You need people to be successful so you can say, I had the successful record, and then you get more work. So part of my frustration was that. And then at a certain point, I realized in the studio, like if I'm hanging out with Bone Crusher, it's hard for me to get a word in sometimes, although he'll let me talk. But when you're hanging out with a star, they're like, oh, they got their own stories, you know? So I'm like battling to get my stories out, right? During the sessions when we're all talking. But there was a certain point where I realized with most of my clients, like, God dang, I'm more interesting than most of my clients. I have better stories. I'm more dynamic. So I'm going to perform. I'm going to start making videos so I have a way to perform, but also I'm going to do all the things that I told the artist to do. I'm an old man, but I'm going to do what they did. And there was a couple of artists I was working with at the time. We had like 5,000 Instagram followers. And it's like, I just started doing what I told them to do. And within like a few months, I had something like 30,000 followers on Instagram. And to be a jerk about it, I went and showed them, see? And they just got mad at me. It's like, but you're the one who's young. I got kids and a wife. I can't hop in a car and go tour and hardly make any money. I got family to take care of. You could. You have no responsibility. And here I'm an old man with gray hair. And I'm doing better than you are, you know? So it's kind of like to be honest with you, I was kind of out of frustration. I was just like, I want to perform. And all the people that I'm talking about, these artists, they're all way more talented than me. They're all better singers and better players and all that, although I think I'm a better performer. But some of them just quit. Some of them are just kind of still haggling around or whatever. And I was like, man, I just want to move on. I want to perform. And hopefully, if the YouTube channel blows up enough, and I'm working on my album now, I can get out and do some shows with my own music. I've been actually gigging with one of my clients who's an old friend. He has a band called the Tokyo Teens. It's very 80s-like music, and started playing guitar with him. And two of my kids are actually in the band. So we'll go out and gig. We don't gig much, but it's like 80s stuff. We'll go out once in a while. It's like, hey, I'm on stage with my kids playing music, which is kind of crazy because they're not actually musicians. They just want to dress up and get on stage. So I taught them how to play what they played, just enough to get through the song so we can all stand on stage and jump around. But, you know, it's kind of like, man, I just want to move forward with stuff, you know? It's like, I'm very excited about YouTube and social media. There's a lot of screwed up things with social media. It's like, there's like a lot of really bad things about it. But on the other hand, my God, like, this is an old man thing. When I was young, I'd walk 10 miles through the snow. Look,
uphill both ways.
Man, when I had bands, actually with my buddy who's got the Tokyo Teens now, his group, he was in one of my bands back in the 80s and into the 90s. If I had a gig in Birmingham, Alabama, which is 3 hours from where I live, for us to promote that, we'd have to drive to Birmingham, Alabama with a staple gun and staple up posters. That's all we could do. What else was there? We didn't have money to do radio campaigns, and you couldn't. The only way you could get your music heard is maybe you could get it played on a college station. That was it, you know. And I'd have to pay. I would have to pay more money to print up posters and the staples than it cost to put a video up on YouTube or on social media. So it's like, I know there's a lot of competition, but it's like, my God, I can do that right here. And the ability to get out there, like, yeah, there's a lot of competition, but if you're really good and you just focus on your delivery and you're consistent enough, you can make something happen. Man, I've seen people on Instagram that was like had 5,000 followers, and then 2 years later they got 300,000, and they're doing national tours. And I watched them do this, and I'm like, that's amazing. That's amazing to me. So to me, it's exciting. It's like, damn, I wish I'd been around when I'm younger. Well, I'm old, but I'm going to do it anyway. So to me, it's like, this is an opportunity. I was always trying to make my own records with my own bands, and we'd put out cassettes and all that. And I got some college radio station airplay on WRIS here in Atlanta, which at the time was one of the main college radio stations in the United States. And I did actually get some major label interest from getting songs played on that radio station. But I mean, that was cool. We weren't doing the right kind of music. But man, I don't know. I'm actually really excited about where music is, even though we don't make much money anymore, but artistically and the ability to do what you want, and the fact that people don't judge you by the genre so much, I think it's an amazing time to be making music.
I think my brother's last show, shout out Boone and Keel, or when he was being interviewed on the college radio station that I used to be a DJ on, WZRD 88.3 FM here in Chicago. His band he sees as what he called genreless. Like he said, there's no such thing as genre anymore. Mm-hmm. I believe that's a direct quote. Well, I was thinking about what you were saying as you were saying it, and at one point, if you're just listening and not watching on YouTube, there was one point where I was kind of blankly staring into the camera, and it's not because I wasn't hearing things properly. It's because I just saw lists of names go in front of my eyes, up with success and whatnot and music and why, and keeping the intrusive thoughts in, which is what we do, which is why Secondhand Talent's still around. But when I was a teacher, one of my favorite lessons to teach my students was about perspective. I was part of a generation that was raised in thinking that the perspective that we have on life, it takes a paradigm shift to change that. Like it takes a significant change in the circumstances of your life to change your perspective. And that perspective itself is some sort of obstinate thing that, is either the rock or the hard place. And what I've learned as I have grown older is that perspective is more like a diamond, in that all you need to do is either turn it or move yourself a little over to the side, and you see things in a whole new light. And that power lies within us, not within the diamond. So even if the diamond doesn't turn, we can move, and we're still changing the way we see things. So I really, really, really resonate with a lot of what you had to say there.
Cool. I'm glad it made sense.
Me too. You somehow it almost feels like you've done this before, because it you kind of really went through my list of notes in a great order, and you very artfully went around, or I think I did a good job of avoiding the question asking for the bad answer. Do you know about the bad answer?
No.
So Maor Applebaum, one of the great record masterers that's around right now, friend of the show. He was on in season 3, and he'll be on again this season. I remember in our first interview, I really, because he's worked with Yes and Meatloaf and Ingwe and I was like, what's your favorite record to produce? Every time I would ask him, he would successfully, mind you, divert the conversation. And in our second interview, I said to him, I think about like halfway through, I was like, okay, Maor, I've tried enough. You'll never tell me who's your favorite. He goes, look, it's the bad answer, right? It's not about who's the best and who's the worst. It's that you have to love what you do. And if you love what you do, it's all great. And that's a bad answer, but it's the right one. It's an honest one.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with him. And I think I tried to do a good job of avoiding those sorts of questions. However, rather than asking about who you see coming up in the game, right? I'm more curious to get your take on, technology is rapidly advancing. Where do you see the future of folks like yourselves in production with AI and those other tools coming out?
Well, I don't think that looks so good. I feel like AI is going to be able to mix songs, and obviously people can produce songs and all that. And I don't like the whole AI thing because it's basically theft, because they're basically sampling people's stuff and churning it up and all that. But ain't anything I can do about it. I look at it like it's, the labels and the industries out there, they're going to embrace this because then they don't have to deal with pesky artists and pay them and pay royalties. They'll just keep all the money. So there's going to be more competition out there. And they're getting pretty good at making fake people. But my thing is like, I kind of look at it as a new genre that has appeared in a way. Like, oh, now there's this new genre over here. And now we got to compete with that. Or do we need to compete? Am I really competing? Am I just going to do my thing and then it'll be out there and,
Is it kind of like a catch-all of like, no matter what, like, subgenre it is, like let's say like rock, country, pop, hip hop, etc. If it's AI created, it's AI music as a genre.
In a way, yeah. I guess that's a better way. That's kind of how I look at it.
I like that take.
Yeah,
I'm not mad at that.
And I understand why people use it. But the funny thing is like AI is pretty good at faking music, but AI is pretty stupid. I mean, oh my God, like. Because I'll go on there and ask questions. I'm always going online asking some technical question, right? And then now it comes up in the browser. The first thing is always the AI answer, which I normally ignore. But I've been kind of looking at the answers lately just to see what it says. And it's amazing, like if it's a technical thing with software, it always says, go to your settings and blah, blah. And it's the most generic answer. And it's not, there's nothing there. But if you ask them a technical question, God, there was one the other day. I can't remember what it was, but it was something that somehow I was involved. I can't remember what it was, but literally the answer was like, that's not what actually happened. That's not it at all. And then I was actually listening. This is funny. I was listening to a podcast today. It was Radio Lab, and they're talking about AI, and they're talking to this guy. He's like, oh yeah, you got ChatGPT, but we did this test. Okay. If you take some mice and you stick some mice in a maze with some cheese over here, they will figure out how to get the cheese. Fucking AI can't do that. In some cases, a freaking mouse is smarter than AI because it's good at mathematical stuff, computational stuff. The whole Chat GPT thing, the text thing, it's just coming up with the most likely answer based on a bunch of stuff.
I'll tell you why. Because what AI lacks is context.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that no matter how advanced you make the system, lived experience cannot be faked. And it doesn't surprise me because I heard a story recently of somebody asking about what's the purpose of a compass, and instead of getting mad, the drill sergeant treated it like a real question and answered it and was like, what if all the GPS stuff fails? And he was like, oh, it's a failsafe. He's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, great. And he like beat half his class. I have another guy who's going to be on this season, thankfully, Ethan Spencer. He's 20 years old and he is I
just got to show you. I actually have two compasses within arm's reach. I just had it's like I have two compasses. Anyway.
Fabulous. Oh, but Ethan Spencer, who's going to be on this season as well, he's a taper, right? Always thank a taper. If you're at a concert and you see someone taping it, thank the taper. Thank a taper. Always thank a taper. He's a taper. He's 20 years old. God bless him. He's been filming and recording concerts for over a year now. And I am so excited to see a new generation of people taking live music seriously, because that to me is what brings back folks like you, is really bringing the humanity back into it, bringing the context to the art that we're putting out.
I noticed that years ago that as the internet rose and people are like more online all the time, a lot of people want to go out and experience music because we're also disconnected. Like my kids, all my kids, I got 3 kids, and they're like, I tell them these stories about my brother and I, all the crazy stuff we did, and they all would like to do that, but nobody will go outside. Like they're dying to go do something. It's God, you know, that actually it's funny. I can't get them to do the damn dishes and do their damn chores, but when it comes to band rehearsal, they'll show up and packing up the gear, and they'll get to the gig and like it, you know, like we need to load up the van, or we're done playing, we got to get the gear in the van, and they're on top of that. I can't get it. Then it occurred to me, it's like, oh, you know what? Because it's a live, an adventure, going out and doing stuff. The last gig we did was like a couple weeks ago, and there's this homeless guy that hangs out in the alley behind the club, and the owner had told me, like, oh, that guy is like, he thinks he runs the alley, you can just ignore him. But he was really cool, and he tried to make it sound like I had to pay to park back there, and the owner's like, you can just ignore him. But he was actually so helpful, I gave him like $10, right? And then one of my kids made friends with him. Like they ended up hanging out, like talking about, you know, his tent and all this other stuff and music and all that. And they're just, I think people are dying for real connection with people. And it's like, you know, my kids actually do spend a lot of time on, they got all these friends that are all over the world and they talk all the time, but they're not together as people. And I think like everybody's missing that. And to, you know, come back to the AI thing, I got my own stories, and I don't know, the way, it's not the same thing, because it's definitely a bigger threat. There's a lot of stuff with AI that just disgusts me, and these data centers and all this kind of, like, nobody really asked for this shit. But I do remember when the music business was crashing, like the way things worked. I was making stupid amounts of money, and there was a system, and as it was going down, God, I remember like people coming in the studio, because I never really paid much attention, but they said, oh, Epic just laid off 30 people yesterday. And then next week it'd be like, Sony laid off 50 people. But it kept going, it kept going, it kept going. And I had friends that just quit, you know, it got harder and harder. And one of my friends who worked on some big records, and he was always like, he was like ahead of me as far as like rock stuff. I mean, I learned stuff from him, and he ended up becoming an electrician. I mean, maybe that was a smarter thing to do, but I was like, well, I mean, what else am I going to, this is what I want to do, you know? So I just stuck with it. And it's like, I don't make near the money I made before back in those days, but this is what I wanted to do. And I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to figure something out. And that's kind of the way I look at the AI thing. I could be totally wrong. Who knows what's going to happen, but regardless of all that, I'm going to do what I want to do.
And regardless, that's a great attitude to have about it, if that's what it's going to be. Folks, we are running out. We could go on and on and on, but I always love to say that the first time we have a guest on is just setting the stage for the next time we have them on. So for the length of the format of this show, we have run out of time. Billy, are there any words you'd like to leave the audience with?
Oh, it was great talking. I could go on for a long time, but yeah, just, you know, it's cool to be here. Cool to talk about things. Please go check out my YouTube channel, Freaking Out with Billy Hume, and check out some of the videos.
And there will be links to all of Billy's work in the description of this episode. Check down below. If you're listening, leave a review. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. To all of our listeners, readers, viewers, and observers around the world, thank you. We love you, and we will see you next week.
See ya.
That's a podcast.